Definition of conflict: conflict versus violence. To be human is to interact with, to affect, and be affected by other human beings every day of our lives. Humans have diverse beliefs, attitude, behaviors, and interests. Sometimes these differences create tension which may lead to conflicts. Conflict is an inescapable fact of life. If improperly handled, it can have undesirable results. In the larger setting, many conflicts have become violent, which have resulted to the loss of lives, destruction of property, disruption of economic and cultural activities, disruption in the delivery of socio-economic services, exploiting of civilians, especially women and children, and economic losses among others. So, what is conflict? So the word conflict comes from the Latin word conflictus, which means collision or clash. Below are the most recognized definition of conflict. First, it is a struggle between opponents over values and claims to scarce status, power, and resources. The second definition is a dynamic process in which structure, attitudes, and behaviors are constantly changing and influencing one another. Third, takes place whenever incompatible activities occur. One party is interfering, disrupting, obstructing, or in some other way making another party's action less effective. Fourth, it is a process in which two or more parties attempt to frustrate the attainment of the other's goals. The factors underlying conflict are threefold. One is interdependence, difference in goals, and differences in perception. Or is a perceived divergence of interest or a belief that the party's current aspiration cannot be achieved simultaneously. Are communicative interactions amongst people who are interdependent and who perceive that their interests are incompatible, inconsistent, or in tension. Or last is an interaction between actors, individuals, groups, organizations, etc., which at least one actor senses incompatibilities between their thinking, imaginations, perception, and or feeling and those of others. Conflict is part of human nature. It is a fact of human life. It is inevitable. Accordingly, we all find that to some extent we are in competition with our fellow beings. So, what is the difference between conflict and violence? So, first, conflict is an expression of our difference, of diversity, or a manifestation of our needs or right being suppressed. How we respond and deal with conflict will color the consequences as either good or bad. On the other hand, violence is response to conflict and extreme response to conflict. Violence is any physical, emotional, verbal, institutional, or structural action, behavior, attitude, condition that aims to diminish, dominate, or destroy ourselves and others. Another difference is conflict can be both positive and negative, but violence is intended to be negative and destructive. So, what are the benefits of a conflict? According to Shirley Campbell, a psychologist, that the most innovative solutions often arise out of conflict. Below are 10 different benefits of conflict. First, opens our eyes to new ideas. As thoughts are expressed back and forth, we allow someone else to fine tune the truth we are communicating. As our perspective becomes further shaped against theirs, conflicts is incredibly useful as creative fine tuning instrument to our own ideas. Hearing another person's perception helps to mold and clarify our own. 2. Opportunity to verbalize needs. Most people do not get what they want because they do not say what they want. Conflict provides an opportunity to verbalize our needs to get them. Conflict, confrontation, and or speaking up make us more resilient and less fearful when asking for what is needed. 3. Teaches flexibility. If we are in conflict, we are not only going to have others adjusting to us and our perspectives, but we will also be adjusting to others and their perspective. We have to discipline ourselves to not always have to be right. 4. Teaches us to listen. The key to any successful conflict resolution is the ability to listen. Listening takes patience and the discipline to control our impulses to speak. 5. Teaches us patterns of behavior. As we engage in conflict, we learn about how others work, their style of communication, and their point of view. Knowing patterns help us be more effective in our relationships as they provide some level of predictability. This knowledge helps us define and work within their patterns, allowing us to respect limits and to predict where and when we can push without being offensive and still get the deal done. 6. Leads to solutions. When structures or agreements that are in place are no longer working, something new has to come into play. Change is hard. It creates discomfort and we naturally want to hang on to what once worked even when it's clearly outdated and in need of upgrading. To be successful, all things need to be in the process of being in development. Conflict is the back door to reinvention and innovation. 7. Practice communication skills. Communication is a skill that requires self-control, patience, and intelligence. The more we engage in conflict, the better a communicator we become. This is not to say we should go out and create conflict, but the intention is not to be afraid to participate in conflict when it arises. 8. Helps us to set limits. Conflict is the perfect place to set limits and make new agreements which fall in line with the respect and integrity of all involved. Conflict teaches us when to back off and when to activate for ourselves by asking someone else to back off. 9. Practice emotional control. If we want to be taken seriously, we must approach conflict seriously. We must learn to remain calm and to use the least amount of words to get our point across, all the while remaining firm and flexible. 10. Allows us to differentiate ourselves. We can learn a great deal about who we are through the differences we have with other people. This is called differentiation. Differentiation is our capacity to tell our truth and perspective as clearly as we see it, all the while remaining engaged with all those who believe differently from us. Thank you for listening, and that's all.